He looked at the woman he once called his wife, and he laughed. Not a small laugh. A cruel one. The kind that fills a courtroom and makes everyone else laugh too, because he is rich, and rich men's laughter is contagious. Your Honor, he said, straightening his gold cufflinks, this woman has nothing. She came from nothing. She left with nothing. And now she wants to stand in my court, in my company's name, and pretend she is somebody. The room laughed with him. Ngozi did not laugh. She sat with her hands folded on the table, in the same blue dress she wore the day they got married, 7 years ago, in a small village compound with no decorations and no music, only 2 people who believed love was enough. She did not defend herself. She did not cry. She only waited. Because Ngozi knew something Chidi Obiora did not know. She knew what was written on the papers in the judge's hands. And in exactly 4 minutes, the whole courtroom, including the man laughing the loudest, was going to find out too. This is the story of a woman who was thrown away like she was nothing, and the day the truth stood up and called her name. The Lagos High Court was full that morning. Not because the case was famous. Because Chidi Obiora was famous. Everybody knew his name. Obiora Group. Hotels. Shipping. Real estate towers that touched the sky in 3 cities. 10 years ago he was nobody. Now his face was on magazine covers, his name was in business news, and his new fiancée, Amara, wore a diamond on her finger that cost more than most people's houses. Today, he sat at the front of the courtroom, dressed in a suit so sharp it looked like it was made from money itself. Beside him sat his lawyer, a tall man with a leather briefcase and a smile that never reached his eyes. Across the room, alone, sat Ngozi. She wore a simple blue dress. Old shoes. No jewelry. No lawyer beside her. She had one, a young man named Barrister Uche, but he sat quietly, waiting, because he had told her something the night before that she did not fully understand yet. Ngozi, he had said, tomorrow, just stay calm. No matter what he says. No matter how he insults you. Let him talk. She did not know why. But she trusted him. So she sat, and she waited, and she let Chidi talk. Your Honor, Chidi began, standing, 7 years ago, I married this woman out of pity. She was a poor village girl with nothing to her name. No education. No family wealth. Nothing. I gave her everything, clothes, a home, a name people respected. And when I built my company, when I finally became someone in this world, she could not keep up. She was too simple. Too plain. Too poor in spirit for the life I was building. Someone in the back row laughed. Chidi smiled at the laughter. He liked it. Now, he continued, her lawyer claims she has some stake, in Obiora Group. This is not just false. It is insulting. It is the kind of lie a desperate woman tells when she has nothing left to hold on to. He turned to Ngozi, and for the first time, looked directly at her. You were nothing when I met you, he said. You are nothing now. The only difference is, back then, you didn't pretend to be something you're not. The room went quiet, waiting for her response. Ngozi lifted her chin. Say what you need to say, Chidi, she said softly. I am not afraid of your words anymore. He smiled, satisfied, like a man who had already won. He had no idea he was standing on the edge of a cliff. To understand what was about to happen in that courtroom, you have to go back. Back to a small village called Umuoji, where a boy named Chidi used to sleep on a wooden bench behind his uncle's shop because he had no proper bed of his own. Chidi was poor then. Not poor like people say when they mean a little short on cash. Poor like skipping meals. Poor like wearing the same shirt for 3 days in a row. Poor like having big dreams and no money to chase them. Ngozi's family was not rich either, but they had something Chidi's family didn't, a small piece of farmland left by her late father. It wasn't worth much. But it was something. Ngozi met Chidi at the market, where he sold phone accessories from a small wooden table. She liked how hard he worked. How he never complained. How he always said, "One day, this will be a real shop. One day, this will be a company." Everyone laughed when he said things like that. Ngozi never laughed. "I believe you," she told him one evening, as they sat under a mango tree near the market. "I don't know how. But I believe you." Nobody had ever said that to him before. When Chitty needed money to buy his first real shipment of goods, enough to actually start a business instead of just dreaming about one, he had nowhere to turn. The banks would not look at a boy like him. His family had nothing to give. Ngozi went home that night and she sold the only thing of value her father had left her. The land. She did not tell her mother until after it was done. She did not tell Chitty where the money came from, only that she found a way. She gave him every single naira from that land, and she asked for only one thing in return. "Let me be part of it," she said. "Not as your wife only. As someone who helped build it. Write my name somewhere. Not for money. Just so that one day, when it's big, I can look at it and know, I was there when it was small." Chitty laughed, but not a cruel laugh this time. A warm one. "Ngozi," he said, "if this ever becomes something, your name will be written where it matters most." He kept that promise in a way she never expected, and in a way he himself would forget. They got married a year later, in that same small village compound. No decorations. No band. Just family, rice, and two people who believed love was the only real currency they had. Chitty's business grew. Slowly, then quickly. A small shop became 3 shops. 3 shops became a trading company. The trading company became Obiora Group. And somewhere in the excitement of growing rich, Chitty began to forget who had believed in him first. Before the money came, there was a small one-room apartment in Onitsha where Chitty and Ngozi lived during their first year of marriage. It had one fan that didn't work properly. A mattress on the floor. A small stove where Ngozi cooked rice almost every single night, because rice was what they could afford. But those nights were warm. "When we're rich," Chitty used to say, holding her hand under the candlelight when the power went out, "I will build you a kitchen bigger than this whole apartment." "I don't need a big kitchen," Ngozi would say, laughing. "I just need you to keep talking to me like this. Every night. Forever." He would kiss her forehead. "Every night. Forever. I promise." He worked long hours. She waited for him with warm food and warmer words. When business deals failed, she was the one who told him, "Try again tomorrow. You are not finished. You are just starting." When his first big shipment was almost lost at the port due to a corrupt officer demanding a bribe he could not pay, it was Ngozi who pawned her wedding ring, the only gold she owned, to save it. He never knew, until years later, why her ring finger stayed empty for almost a year. These were the years nobody in the courtroom knew about. The years before photographers followed him. Before magazines called him a self-made man. Before people forgot that no man builds anything completely alone. The audience watching this story already knows something painful is coming. Because money changes people. And Chitty was about to change. By the 5th year of their marriage, Obiora Group had 300 employees. Chitty wore suits now instead of second-hand shirts. He drove instead of walked. He was invited to events with senators, other business owners, people whose names were printed in gold on invitation cards. His mother, who had once told Ngozi, "Thank you for believing in my son when I couldn't afford to feed him," began saying different things. "Chitty," she said one evening, "you are a big man now. You need a big wife. Ngozi is a good woman, but she is simple. She does not know how to talk to these people. She does not know which fork to use at dinner. People will laugh at you." "She sold her father's land for me," Chitty said quietly. "She saved everything I have." That was before, his mother said. This is now. Slowly, painfully, before and now became different worlds, and Ngozi found herself standing outside the second one, watching through a window she wasn't invited through anymore. At company dinners, Chitty introduced her as my wife in a voice that sounded like an apology. At parties, wealthy women looked at her simple dresses and whispered behind painted fingernails. Chitty noticed the whispers. He never defended her. Just try to fit in, he told her once, after a dinner where she had asked an embarrassing question about the business, a question that, in truth, showed she understood the company better than most of the guests. "I am trying, Chitty," she said, her voice breaking. "I am trying to be your wife. I don't know how to be someone else." He looked away. He did not answer. That was the night she stopped waiting up for him with warm food. Amara arrived at exactly the wrong time, or, depending on how you see it, exactly the right time for Chitty's mother's plans. She was the daughter of a business associate. Educated abroad. Elegant. She knew exactly which fork to use, exactly what to say to impress the senators and their wives, exactly how to laugh at the right moment during a boring conversation. "She understands this world," Chitty's mother said. "She fits." At first, Chitty resisted. "I am married," he told his mother firmly. But slowly, meeting after meeting, dinner after dinner where Amara was somehow always seated beside him for business reasons, something in him began to shift. Ngozi noticed before anyone said a word. She noticed how he came home later. How his phone stayed face down on the table. How he stopped calling her my love and started calling her simply Ngozi, the way you'd address someone you were tolerating rather than someone you adored. One evening, she found the truth, not from spying, but from simple honesty. She asked him directly. "Are you in love with someone else?" Chitty did not answer for a long time. "I don't know what I feel anymore," he finally said. "Everything is different now, Ngozi." "I am different. I am still the same woman who sold her father's land for you," she whispered. "I am still the same woman who gave you everything I had." "That was a different life," he said, and the words cut deeper than any insult could have. Within 6 months, papers were filed. A quiet divorce. No big scandal, Chitty made sure of that, because scandals are bad for business. He gave her a small settlement, for her trouble, as his lawyer put it, and asked her to sign quickly, quietly, and disappear from his new world. Ngozi signed everything. Except one paper. There was one document Chitty's lawyer never thought to check carefully, an old founding document from the very first year of the company, filed when Obiora Group was just a small trading business with big dreams and almost no money. A document Chitty himself had forgotten existed. A document with Ngozi's name on it. Ngozi disappeared from Chitty's world exactly the way he wanted. She moved to a small flat in Enugu. She took a job as a seamstress, sewing dresses for women in her neighborhood. She never spoke badly about Chitty to anyone, even when people asked why the wife of the famous Obiora had ended up so plain, so quiet, so poor again. "Some things are between two people," she would say. "Not the whole world." She rebuilt her life slowly, painfully, the same way Chitty once rebuilt his business, one small step at a time, with no one clapping for her, no one writing about her in magazines. Meanwhile, Chitty married Amara in a wedding that cost more than most people's houses. Newspapers called it the wedding of the year. His mother cried tears of joy at the altar. Nobody mentioned the first wedding, the one under a mango tree, with rice and no band, where a girl had sold her father's land for a boy's dream. Obiora Group kept growing. It became so big that international investors wanted to buy a majority stake, a deal worth billions of naira, one that would make Chitty one of the richest men in the country. But there was a problem. To complete the sale, the company's lawyers had to review every single founding document, every share certificate, every paper filed since the very beginning, a routine legal process called due diligence. And in an old, dusty file from the company's very first year, a young lawyer named Barrister Uche found something that made his hands go cold. A shareholder agreement. Signed by Chitty Obiora. And by Ngozi Ease. 42%. Never revoked. Never removed. Never legally cancelled, because in all the excitement of growing rich, in all the meetings with senators and international investors, nobody had ever thought to check. Barrister Uche closed the file slowly. Then he picked up his phone and called a number he had not called in 5 years. "Ngozi," he said. "We need to talk. It's about the company." Barrister Uche had once been Chidi's junior lawyer, back in the early days, before Chidi could afford senior counsel. He remembered Ngozi well, remembered how she had come into the small law office years ago and asked, in a quiet nervous voice, "Please, can you write something for me? I want my name on the company. Not for money. Just so it's real." He had drafted it himself. A simple agreement, signed and witnessed, filed among 100 other early documents nobody thought would ever matter. When he found it again, 5 years later, sitting in the middle of a Billionaire acquisition deal, he understood immediately what it meant. He could have stayed quiet. Chidi was his biggest client. Staying quiet would have meant more money, more favor, more comfort. But Uche remembered something else, the way Ngozi's voice had shaken that day, the way she said "just so it's real," like she already suspected that one day, everything else about her marriage might not be. He drove to Enugu the next morning. He found Ngozi in a small tailoring shop, bent over a sewing machine, a client's dress half finished on the table. "Ngozi," he said. "Do you remember the paper you asked me to write, years ago? About the company?" She looked up slowly. Her hand stopped moving. "I remember," she whispered. "It's still valid," Uche said. "It was never cancelled. Ngozi, you own 42% of Obiora Group." The sewing machine went silent. For a long moment, Ngozi said nothing at all. Then, quietly, she said the words that would define everything that came after. "I don't want revenge. I never wanted revenge. I just want the truth to finally stand where it belongs." Because Ngozi's shares had never been legally removed, the international investors' lawyers froze the acquisition deal immediately. A shareholder holding 42% had to be formally notified, had to sign off, had to be given the chance to object, or the entire Billionaire sale would collapse. Chidi was furious when his lawyers told him. "This is impossible," he said. "Fix it. Remove her name. Pay her off if you have to. I need this deal closed by next month." "Sir," his senior lawyer said carefully, "you cannot simply remove a legitimate shareholder. This has to go through the courts. And she has already retained counsel." "Whose?" "Barrister Uche." Chidi's face went pale for just a second, a flicker Amara noticed from across the room, though she said nothing. "Fine," Chidi said, straightening his jacket. "Then we settle this in court. Quickly. Quietly. I'll make her an offer she can't refuse to walk away." He believed, the way rich men often believe, that money could erase any inconvenient truth. He did not yet understand that Ngozi was not asking for money. She was asking to finally be seen. Which brings us back to where this story began. The courtroom. Chidi, confident, mocking, standing over the woman he once loved, laughing about how she had nothing and was nothing, while his lawyer prepared documents meant to quietly buy her silence and her shares for a fraction of their true worth. "Your Honor," Chidi's lawyer said smoothly, "my client is prepared to offer Mrs. E's a generous settlement of 50 million naira to relinquish any claimed stake and end this matter peacefully." 50 million naira. To most people in that room, an unimaginable fortune. To 42% of a company worth over 100 billion naira, it was almost an insult. Barrister Uche stood. "Your Honor," he said calmly, "before we discuss settlement, I would like the court to formally review Exhibit A, the original 2019 shareholder agreement for Obiora Group Limited." He walked forward and placed a folder in front of the judge. Chidi rolled his eyes. "Your Honor, this is a delay tactic. Some old paper from before the company was even worth anything." "With respect," Uche said, "the validity of a shareholder agreement does not expire simply because the company becomes successful. If anything, Your Honor, it becomes more important." The judge, a stern woman named Justice Adiz Ihanacho, opened the folder slowly. The courtroom went quiet as she began to read. Justice Ihanacho's eyes moved down the page. Her expression, calm at first, slowly shifted, first a small frown, then a raised eyebrow, then something close to genuine surprise, an expression rarely seen on a judge's face. She looked up. Not at Chitty's lawyer. Not at Ngozi. At Chitty himself. Mr. Obiora, she said slowly, am I to understand that you personally signed this document in 2019? Chitty's confidence flickered. Your Honor, that was a long time ago. It was informal. It doesn't reflect current. It reflects a legally binding agreement, Justice Ihanacho said, witnessed, signed, and never revoked, granting 42% ownership of Obiora Group Limited to. She paused. She looked directly at the woman in the blue dress sitting quietly at the defense table. Ngozi ease. The courtroom erupted into whispers. Chitty's lawyer went pale. Amara, sitting in the front row, gripped her handbag so tightly her knuckles turned white. Somewhere behind them, a journalist who had come only to cover a minor celebrity divorce case suddenly realized he was sitting on the story of the year. Chitty stood frozen, staring at the document as though it might change if he looked hard enough. That's impossible, he said quietly. That was just something small. From before. Before you were successful, Justice Ihanacho said, her voice sharp now. Mr. Obiora, this court has just heard you describe this woman as someone who has nothing and is nothing. Yet according to this legally binding document, she has owned nearly half of everything you built for the past 7 years. She let the silence sit. Then she added, quietly, almost gently. It seems, Mr. Obiora, that the person you called nothing has been holding up almost half of everything. Ngozi did not smile. She did not gloat. She simply closed her eyes for one long moment, as though setting down a weight she had carried for 5 years. Then she opened them, and looked at Chitty, not with anger, but with something far more powerful. Quiet, unshaken dignity. The room that had laughed at Ngozi 20 minutes earlier was now a room full of nervous silence. Chitty's lawyer whispered frantically to his assistant. Amara's face had drained of all color. She understood immediately what this meant. If the deal collapsed because of an unresolved shareholder dispute, the international investors could walk away entirely, and the billionaire lifestyle she had married into could crumble overnight. Chitty, she hissed under her breath, fix this. Now. Chitty's mother, who had once told Ngozi, thank you for believing in my son, now sat rigid in the gallery, her carefully composed face cracking with the realization of what her own words years ago, she does not fit our world anymore, had actually cost her son. Chitty stood slowly. For the first time in years, he looked at Ngozi the way he used to look at her under the mango tree, not as an embarrassment to hide, but as someone whose worth he had never properly measured. Your Honor, he said, his voice suddenly much smaller than before, may I have a moment to speak with Mrs. Ease? Privately? This is a courtroom, Mr. Obiora, Justice Ihanacho said. Not a family meeting. But given the shift in circumstances, I will grant a 30-minute recess. She struck her gavel. The room erupted into noise, reporters typing furiously, spectators whispering, Amara pulling Chitty's arm demanding answers he did not have. Only Ngozi remained still. She had waited 5 years for this moment. She could wait 30 more minutes. They met in a small side room, the kind used for lawyers to speak quietly before hearings resume. Chitty closed the door. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. You knew, he finally said. All this time. You knew you owned part of the company. I found out 5 days ago, Ngozi corrected softly. Barrister Uche discovered the old paper during the investor review. I did not come here for revenge, Chitty. I did not even want to come to court at all. But when your lawyer offered me 50 million naira to disappear quietly, like I was some problem to be managed instead of a person who helped build something real. Her voice caught, just slightly. I realized I was tired of disappearing quietly. Chitty sat down slowly, running his hand over his face. I called you nothing. In front of everyone. You did. I don't know why I said it, he admitted. I think it's easier to believe someone was nothing than to admit what you took from them. Ngozi looked at him, really looked, the way she used to, back when his biggest possession was a wooden table at the market and a dream nobody else believed in. "You didn't just take my land, Chitty," she said quietly. "You took the version of yourself who used to say thank you for the smallest things. You took the man who held my hand under candlelight and promised to build me a big kitchen. Money didn't make you a bad man. It made you forget who helped you become a good one." Chitty's eyes filled, unexpectedly, with tears he had not allowed himself in years. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I am so sorry, Ngozi." She did not immediately forgive him. Some wounds do not close simply because an apology arrives. But for the first time in 5 years, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, somewhere underneath the suits and the gold watch, the boy from the mango tree still existed. "I'm not here to destroy your company, Chitty," she said. "I'm here because I refuse to let anyone, including you, tell me I was nothing. That's all I ever wanted. Not 50 million naira. Not revenge. Just the truth, standing where it belongs." When the court reconvened, the atmosphere had completely changed. The mockery was gone. Reporters leaned forward, pens ready. Amara sat with her arms crossed, visibly furious, already calculating what this meant for her own future. Chitty's lawyer stood first. "Your Honor, my client wishes to withdraw the previous settlement offer and instead formally recognize Mrs. Ngozi Eze's 42% ownership stake in Obiora Group Limited, in full accordance with the original 2019 agreement." Gasps rippled through the room. Justice Ihanacho turned to Ngozi. "Mrs. Eze, do you accept this resolution?" Ngozi stood. For the first time since the trial began, her voice carried through the courtroom clearly, steadily, without a single tremble. "I accept my rightful ownership, Your Honor," she said. "Not because I want control of the company. I have no interest in running hotels or shipping lines. But I will not be erased from something I helped build with the only inheritance my father ever gave me." She paused, looking briefly at Chitty. "I will keep my shares as a board member, and I will use my share of the profits to build something of my own, a foundation, to help women in villages like mine get access to education and small business loans, so that no other woman has to sell everything she owns just to prove she believes in someone." The courtroom, which had laughed at her less than an hour earlier, now sat in complete, respectful silence. Justice Ihanacho nodded slowly. "A wise resolution," she said. "Court is adjourned." She struck her gavel one final time. News of the case spread quickly. By evening, it was everywhere. "Billionaire's ex-wife revealed as hidden 42% shareholder," the headlines read. Business magazines that once ignored Ngozi entirely now wanted interviews. She gave only one statement, brief and quiet, the way she did everything. "I am not a story about revenge," she said. "I am a story about a woman who was never really nothing, even when the whole world, including the man I loved, told me I was." Amara left Chitty within 3 months. Without the guaranteed Billionaire acquisition, which international investors eventually reapproved, but only after seeing Ngozi's board involvement as a sign of the company's ethical stability, and with public opinion turning sharply against Chitty's old arrogance, Amara quietly decided the billionaire lifestyle she'd signed up for was worth less than she'd hoped. Chitty's mother tried, several times, to apologize to Ngozi. Ngozi accepted the apology with grace, though the relationship between them was never quite what it once was. Some things, once broken, can be repaired but never fully rebuilt to their original shape, and Ngozi had made peace with that. Chitty rebuilt his company's reputation slowly, this time with genuine humility rather than performed success. He funded Ngozi's foundation quietly, without publicity, because for once, he wasn't doing it to look good in front of anyone. He never remarried. A year later, Ngozi stood at the opening of her foundation's first training center, a small building in Umuoji, not far from the market where she once met a boy selling phone accessories from a wooden table. Local women filled the seats, many of them widows or young girls hoping to start small businesses of their own. Ngozi wore a simple dress, no jewelry, exactly as she always had. Near the back of the crowd, quietly, without cameras or announcement, Chitty stood and watched. When the ceremony ended, he approached her carefully. "You built something beautiful," he said. "We built the money that made it possible," she corrected gently. "But this I built myself." They stood together for a moment, near the same mango tree where they had once sat as two poor young dreamers with nothing but hope between them. "Do you think," Chitty asked quietly, "that we could ever start again?" Slowly. "Honestly, this time?" Ngozi looked at him for a long moment, not with the anger of the courtroom, not with the heartbreak of the divorce, but with the quiet wisdom of a woman who had rebuilt her whole life from nothing, twice, and survived both times with her dignity intact. "Maybe," she said softly. "But this time, Chitty, you will have to earn it." Slowly. "The way I earned everything I have." He nodded, understanding completely. For the first time in years, they smiled at each other, not the smile of two strangers in a courtroom, but the small, honest smile of two people who once believed, under a mango tree, that love was the only currency that truly mattered. And somewhere far behind them, in a filing cabinet in a Lagos office, sat an old, dusty paper from 2019, a paper that once seemed like nothing, that had waited quietly for 5 long years to finally tell the truth. They called her nothing, but her name was written on everything that mattered. And on the day the truth finally spoke, the whole world learned that the woman they threw away was the woman who had been holding everything together all along.